Imagine this, you're a Roman citizen, standing on the massive stone walls of your city. Below you, thousands of barbarian warriors are charging forward, screaming war cries, swinging axes, ready to tear down everything in their path. They've already burned villages. They've already killed countless people, and now they've come for you. But the Romans aren't easy to conquer. The empire wasn't built on luck. It was built on brilliant strategies, unbreakable walls, and war tactics so effective that they're still studied today. And just wait till later in this video when we reveal the one secret defense technique that made Roman cities nearly impossible to conquer. It's going to knock your socks off. So how did Rome keep its cities standing while others fell? Let's dive into it. Roman walls, the first line of defense. If you were an enemy looking at a Roman city, the first thing you'd see wasn't the buildings, the people, or the riches inside. It was the walls. And these weren't just any walls. They were engineering masterpieces. Most barbarian tribes built simple wooden forts, but Rome? They built tall, thick stone fortifications that could withstand almost anything. The most famous? The Aurelian Walls of Rome, 19 kilometers long and up to 8 meters high. Some walls were double-layered, so even if an enemy broke through the first, they'd be trapped and slaughtered before reaching the second. Towers were placed every 30 meters, so archers and ballista operators could rain down death from above. Now imagine you're a barbarian warrior. You charge towards the city, but suddenly you hear a loud twang. A giant spear, shot from a Roman ballista, pierces right through 5 of your men. You freeze. Do you keep attacking, or do you run? That's the power of Roman walls. They didn't just protect, they terrified invaders before the real battle even started. The deadly traps outside the walls. Let's say a barbarian army somehow gets close to a Roman city. Do they just walk up and start attacking the gates? Not so fast. The real nightmare was waiting outside the walls. Romans were experts at making the battlefield a death zone for anyone who got too close. Hidden spikes, sippi. They would bury sharp wooden stakes in the ground and cover them with grass. Barbarians running towards the city would suddenly trip and get impaled. Wolf pits, holes filled with sharpened stakes, camouflaged to look like solid ground. If a soldier stepped in, their leg was instantly shattered. Caltrops. Imagine stepping on a 4-pointed metal spike with no shoes. Now imagine hundreds of these scattered all around the battlefield. That's what Romans did to invaders. Before the battle even started, many attackers were already wounded, scared, or dead. The murderous Roman gates, a trap. You'd never escape. If an army somehow made it past the traps and reached the city gates, they might think they've won. But this was the deadliest mistake they could make. Roman gates weren't just doors, they were weapons. The entrance was usually a narrow tunnel leading into the city, forcing attackers into a tight space where they couldn't spread out or fight properly. As soon as enemies got inside, the outer gates slammed shut behind them. Then, from above, Roman soldiers rained down boiling oil, arrows, and giant stones on the trapped invaders. It was a death trap, a one-way ticket to the afterlife. Many barbarian armies who tried to break into a Roman city never made it out alive. The secret weapon, the Roman counterattack. Now here's where Rome was different from other civilizations. Most cities, when under siege, would just sit behind their walls and hope for the best. But the Romans, they fought back. They saw defense as another form of attack. Secret tunnels. Many Roman cities had underground escape routes that allowed soldiers to sneak out undetected. These weren't just for fleeing, they were built for counterattacks. Roman troops would emerge behind enemy lines at night, burn their supplies, assassinate key officers, and set fire to siege equipment. By the time the invaders realized what was happening, their entire plan had collapsed. Some cities, like Dura Europos, even had tunnels designed to collapse under enemy siege engines, swallowing them into the ground. Surprise cavalry attacks. The Romans didn't just wait behind their gates. While the enemy focused on breaking through, hidden side gates would open, and elite Roman cavalry would storm out, smashing into the invaders' flanks. These rapid ambushes could turn a siege into a battlefield victory. Fake retreats and deadly traps. Sometimes Roman troops would pretend to flee after an enemy breach, leading invaders deeper into the city. But once inside, hidden Roman forces would close off the exits and massacre the trapped soldiers. At the Siege of Syracuse, 213 to 212 BC, the Romans used this trick to trick Carthaginian mercenaries, who rushed into what they thought was an open gate, only to be trapped in a deadly ambush. This aggressive defense made Roman cities almost impossible to conquer. While other civilizations focused only on holding the walls, Rome used the siege against their enemies, turning the attackers into the ones being hunted. How Rome's enemies tried and failed to break their cities. Not every army gave up. Some barbarian leaders tried insane tactics to break into Roman cities. They came with everything they had: siege engines, battering rams, and entire armies ready to tear down the walls. But the Romans, they were always ready. Ladders? Romans didn't just push them over. They had specialized troops waiting to hack the wooden ladders apart with axes, while archers picked off climbers one by one. In some cases, they poured boiling water, hot sand, or molten lead down on attackers to burn their flesh and blind them. Battering rams? Roman gates were reinforced with iron plating to withstand heavy blows. Even if an enemy managed to smash through, they were met with secondary gates and tight corridors, where they'd be trapped and massacred. Some cities even had hidden side exits, allowing Roman troops to rush out and ambush the ram operators. Siege towers? These massive wooden structures could reach the height of Roman walls, allowing invaders to storm over them. But the Romans had countermeasures. They set them on fire with flaming arrows. They used ballistae, giant crossbows, to pierce them, and in some cases they even dug trenches in front of the walls so the siege towers got stuck in the mud before they could be used. One of the most famous sieges happened in Alesia, 52 BC, when the Gallic leader Vercingetorix tried to defeat Julius Caesar. He built walls around the Roman city, trapping the Romans inside, cutting off their supplies. It seemed like the perfect strategy: starve the Romans out, and they'd surrender. But instead of panicking, Caesar did the unthinkable. He built a second wall around the enemy army. Now, Vercingetorix was trapped too. His own troops began starving, and when they tried to break out, the Romans slaughtered them. It was genius. Rome turned a siege into a death trap, and won. The fall of Roman cities. Why these defenses stopped working for centuries? Rome's defensive tactics made its cities almost impossible to conquer. No matter how many times enemy forces attacked, the Romans always had a counterplan: strong walls, clever traps, and aggressive counterattacks. But eventually, even Rome's greatest cities began to fall. So, what changed? Why did the unbreakable Roman defenses stop working? Corruption and neglect. In its prime, Rome had a well-trained, well-paid army. But as the empire became wealthier, its leaders grew lazy and corrupt. Instead of maintaining a powerful military, they spent money on luxuries, bribed enemies instead of fighting them, and allowed their once disciplined legions to weaken. Many Roman soldiers became mercenaries, fighting for money instead of loyalty. Overstretching the empire, Rome became too big. At its height, it controlled lands from Britain to the Middle East. But with thousands of miles of borders to defend, it became impossible to protect every city. As Rome's armies became thinner and weaker, barbarian invaders found cracks in the empire's armor. Stronger and smarter enemies. The barbarians weren't just wild tribes anymore. Over time, they learned from Rome. They started using catapults, battering rams, and siege towers, Rome's own weapons, against them. Cities that had once been impenetrable were suddenly vulnerable. The greatest shock came in 410 AD, when the Visigoths, led by Alaric, did the unthinkable. They sacked Rome itself. The empire that had ruled the world for centuries couldn't even protect its own capital. And in 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire collapsed forever. But even today, historians and military experts still study Rome's defensive tactics, because no civilization has ever been as prepared, strategic, and ruthless in city defense as the Romans once were. Conclusion: why Rome was different. So why were Roman cities so hard to conquer? Because they didn't just build walls, they built death traps. They didn't just defend, they fought back. And that's why Rome lasted for over 1,000 years while so many other empires crumbled. So the next time you play a strategy game or watch a war movie, remember, Rome did it first, and they did it best. Would you have survived a Roman siege? Let us know in the comments. And if you want to learn how Romans got drinking water without modern plumbing, check out our next video.